Okay, so I'm very excited. Here we are today with another episode of our Voices of Innovation podcast. I am so honored today to introduce Michael Levin, who we met fairly recently, who attended our We Summit as one of our keynote speakers. So thank you for joining us today, Michael.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me. It was an honor being at your summit.
So happy that you were there. So, and I want to put up your little banner. So we do these podcasts because we want to bring some leadership perspectives and insights. And Michael is the president and CEO of Custom Solutions and is an entrepreneur. And I'm going to start right there before we get into all the rest of the questions I have for you, and just have you introduce yourself a little bit, your background. What is it that led you to where you are today, Michael?
Sounds good, Jackie. Going back a lot of years, my corporate career was with Pepsi. I ran divisions for them in San Francisco, Oakland, and Reno. And for the past 35 years, and I know you think I can't possibly be that old, I've launched businesses in a wide variety of industries, everything from automotive, healthcare, software, real estate. And most have done well, some have not done so well, but that's the life of the entrepreneur, and feel very proud to have built four multi-million-dollar companies over that time. And for the past 20 plus years, because it's a lot of fun, I've had the honor of doing keynotes and workshops around the world for wide varieties of organizations and companies of all sizes. And this is fun, which is why I'm here with you today. It's so enjoyable to be doing this and be able to make a difference for people.
I'm so fascinated by that, by the way, to have that many businesses be that successful. I'm curious about that. So that's going to lead into my first question for you of when you're building these businesses, and really some of this you have applied to the corporate world, but then in your own ventures as well. What are some of those leadership principles that you fall back on time and time again?
What I'll go with, Jackie, is like the topic I spoke about at your conference and the masterclass. I believe in creating entrepreneurial workplaces. I want to create ownership. And if you're creating ownership, there are four pillars that I like to live by, which is I want leaders to provide guidance, mentorship, sponsorship, and support. And if they lead by those four pillars, then they're going to be strategic leaders. They're going to create an environment of entrepreneurship and innovation. One of those pillars is not telling people what to do. It's about getting your people to lead more bottom up. And if you're leading top down, which the vast majority of organizations and leaders do, then to me, you're going to be much more of a tactical leader. And tactical leaders to me miss out on so much because it's way too much day to day as opposed to looking at the bigger picture and doing things that are good for your entire organization, all of your people, and those clients and customers you serve.
Oh, I like that. So bottom up, that's a tough one because that is not the way a lot of organizations are run. So before we get on to talking about some other things, what are some ways you've been able to do that? And first of all, that can't be easy going into every company or starting companies and leading bottom up. That is like a topsy-turvy. So what are your insights on that?
It's not easy, Jackie, because you're right. Leaders want to control, and that's going to be top down. And
Mhm.
for the bottom up, people want safety and security. It's their number one need. And being entrepreneurial and innovative requires risk. And that risk can feel like it's insecure, like it could be putting your job at risk. So creating that culture takes time. It's not something you can just announce. It's not going to be your mission statement on a wall. It is your behavior, it's your actions that are going to create that. And to do that, you know, as you're asking that question, something came back to me. In our automotive industry, when we launched our business, we hired people who were innovators because and people who wanted to be entrepreneurs because we said we don't have a single customer, and we didn't. We hired 8 people to start. We didn't have a single customer, and we said you got a paycheck for 2 weeks. I can't promise you anything after that. So for them to come on board, they had to be somewhat entrepreneurial and want to be part of
Yeah.
it. The second thing, we gave them a choice right away. We said, if you look around the room, there are not extra people in here, because all of a sudden in 2 weeks, we had 40 customers. And we said, here's the deal. You got two choices. We can hire another person and they are your backup when you're sick, when you want to take a vacation. And then everyone can have 32 hours. Or you can own your piece of the business. You got full time. If you miss, you got to make it back up. And when people are taking vacations, we've got to help each other out. Your vote. What do you want to do? All of them said full time, we'll own our business and we'll cover for each other. So they made that decision from the start to be entrepreneurial. And I think once you do that, give your people a chance to make critical decisions, give them a chance to take ownership. That's what the culture becomes.
That's a really good point, because in what we do at We United, we're actually trying to influence the culture quite a bit in these different organizations we go into. But I really like that concept, because usually what we see is people trying to say what the culture is or present what the culture should be. But you're saying let the people drive the culture.
Exactly. You're gonna create the vision of ownership, and then you're gonna let them make those decisions to create that culture, to make things good for everybody. Because yeah, the companies that I see who have their mission statements that say this is what our culture is, people ignore it, and it doesn't serve you, because if
No.
you don't live what's on that wall, then you're out of integrity.
Yeah.
That you're far better off letting your behavior guide your culture as opposed to your words or statements on a wall.
Oh, and the thing is that people don't understand, and this is a tough one, and I'm going to say it. People sniff out the culture in 2 seconds. So you might be a leader trying to say what your culture is. It might not be authentic, and everybody knows it. There's no getting around that. Like there's no faking the culture.
It's true. You're so,
So,
you're so right. You can't. They know. They know right away. It takes almost no time for them to realize what that culture is. And you can feel when there's a sense of family, and you can
yeah.
feel when there's a sense of community as opposed to when it's sterile. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and organizations don't understand that that culture resonates to an entire industry, and everyone knows that as well. So it's interesting what you're saying, because leaders, even though a lot of times we want to control things, there's some things we think we're controlling that we're not. You might be able to control a narrative, but you can't control what people think of your culture based on
Yes.
actions and based on what legitimately is there. So that's just something to keep in mind. But when we're having these conversations, so where do you see companies struggling the most? You've worked with a lot of companies. You go in, you do workshops, you do executive circles, you do executive leadership workshops, helping organizations with their culture, with their leadership, trying to get them with their vision, right? In the right vision for where they're trying to go. So where is it that you're seeing a lot of organizations are really struggling?
I think if there's a number one, and this is kind of funny thinking back 20 years ago when I first got into consulting. I went to a consulting conference and there were a bunch of people, and I asked them what they did, and they said, I do change management. And I said, what's that? Do people really pay you to do this? And when I look at the struggle now, it's around change. And
Yeah.
especially as dynamic as times are, when I look at what's the number one thing that people ask me to speak on, easily it's change. Far and away number one. And the big problem with that for leaders is that leaders lead change backwards. If you lead change top down,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Because to me, if you're trying to lead change, and I don't even know how to do this, by shoving change down someone's throat, I don't know
Yeah.
how you're going to get them to embrace it, which is what top down is going to be. So unless you create a bottom up culture, you're always going to have a culture that resists change, because you can't tell people to change. They've got to buy into it themselves. And that's why that becomes so difficult. I got hired earlier this year for a Southern California company to do a keynote and workshop on change. And where they were taking their company was the right direction. And they had a good culture overall, but they were doing it top down. And I knew when they asked me, we needed to get our people to embrace this change, that they were leading it backwards. And when I gave the talk, I know they wanted me to push their people. What I really needed them to do was teach them how to lead change differently. And the
Mm.
funny thing was, afterwards, one of the things this company does very well is they do surveys and they act on them. So they took polls after the conference. And when I talked to my contact, she said about the survey results that the leaders said that was all great, but what he talked about with us leaders were already doing. And
Mm.
their front line and their frontline managers all said our leaders need to do a whole lot more of what he's talking about.
Wow. You know, that's part of the culture thing that we were talking about, though. People say one thing, and they'll have these workshops. Hey, you know, we want to get everyone on board, but it's like what you just said. Do what he's talking about. It's actually doing that. That's the hard part. And the next step from that is like, are leaders listening? You know, when you're doing these workshops and you're going around and we're having our summits and we're hoping that people go back and do something different, what are your thoughts on that? Do people actually implement the change that you're advocating for?
Yeah. That's such a good question, both in two parts, Jackie, because the question of are leaders listening? Do people feel that way? The answer is absolutely not.
Wow.
Oh no, absolutely not. Such a good question. In one of the workshops for so within my workshops, all the participants work on critical initiatives of their choosing. And there are two guidelines on the initiatives. One is they should serve the organization, its people, and those they serve. It should not just be an organization-driven initiative. And the second piece is on that initiative team, the senior person can't be the leader of the initiative because then it devolves into top-down. So that
Mm.
senior person can't be the leader of it. Well, on one of the initiatives, I asked them to conduct focus groups with the front line because it impacted them. And if you're impacted, you should have a voice. Afterwards, I asked the focus group how that experience was for them. And one person in the focus group said, this is the first time we have been asked our opinion on anything, not just here, but
Mm.
anywhere else we have worked as well. And there were 20 of them participating in the focus groups, and all 20 agreed with her. That's
Wow.
how often people feel heard. You
Wow.
really don't listen.
And then you can't own that change. You can't be a part of it if you, yeah.
No, under those circumstances, you absolutely can't. So, top down, almost a guarantee people aren't going to feel heard. Bottom up, when you're letting them drive the innovations and letting them lead the change, and there's no choice but to be heard because they're the ones driving it, they're the ones leading it. So, in the workshops, they are the ones who lead the innovation. It's not just them deciding what to innovate, but they're the ones also developing the action plans and executing the action plans. So you have to be heard. You're the one doing it. You are being heard. And to me, if you want people to feel heard, you've got to do it through creating entrepreneurship and ownership. You can't do it top down. You're going to be battling yourself constantly.
Mm. That is such a good point. And, you know, segue into the next topic I was going to talk to you about, because this is a big one in the electronics component industry and the supply chain. We supply components to all kinds of manufacturers who are developing the next innovations, medical equipment, cars, you name it, anything with electronics. We supply parts for. So it's pretty impactful for the entire globe with medical innovations and all kinds of stuff going on. And one of the biggest change barriers we see, there's a couple things. Well, one is, you know, obviously leadership and opening the door to all qualified leaders is a big change, and it's a systemic issue in the industry. But also we see it in technology. So we see it with the hardware leaders of the supply chain having a really hard time adopting digital technology. And this comes into a big issue because it prevents us from properly serving our end users, our customers, because the change is so great. The change requires so much that we find the more resistance, the longer period of times, the harder it is to make these changes. And then at some point, the bubble just bursts. So what's your input on something like that? Because some of these topics are really critical when it comes to resisting change.
So I'm curious, Jackie, within the industry, specifically for your industry, what do you see as the key roadblocks? What do you think creates them?
Fear. I think that a lot of these leaders, with, not to disparage them in any way, it's a big deal, right? Some of these changes, you're on the line. When you're CEO, you are on the line, right? You could have the best team you want, but this is a time, I think, leaders being in the details and leaders not being so far removed from the actual business is super important. I would say that in leading change at my way is get in the details early on foundationally and set everyone up in the way that I really want it to go and make sure everyone's on board and then move out, right? But I think because maybe leaders are not wanting to be in the game at that very ground level, it's like a leader, go to the factory, go see what's going on there, go at that ground level. None of us is above anything. That's how I look at it. Like if I have to do the admin back end system work, I'm going to do that because sometimes it requires for me to have the understanding of what others are struggling with. But I don't know. That's my input. But what do you think about that, Michael?
I think you're spot on, Jackie. That a principle I learned many years ago from somebody back in my Pepsi days was management by wandering around. And make sure you're on the floor, talk to your people, ask them questions, ask them what's going well, ask them what's not, walk the floor and ask them, show me what you're doing.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Okay, how would you change this? How would you make this better? It is so powerful and so important. One organization that I worked with, their CEO, and she was really good, really a good CEO. And I said, you need to walk your floor more. And so she walked around and she came back and she said, nobody talked to me. I said, of course they aren't going to talk to you. They're going to wonder why you're there. This has got to be a regular habit. And then you've got to walk up to them and ask them questions. And she was a total bottom up leader. She was great. I mean, she had turned around a family culture that was really a monarchy and then turned this into a bottom up company. It was brilliant at how she did it. And even for someone like that they don't think about walking the floor, spending time with their people, asking them questions, because you will get surprises. One of her biggest surprises was for one of the initiative teams. They were doing a capital expenditure initiative and they wanted to make a recommendation about purchasing a new piece of equipment. And that was on page 2 of her original list. When they made their presentation, what she had no idea was it was breaking down every day, which she knew. But when her people were fixing it, they were getting shocked. They were literally getting electric shocks. And I saw her eyes open wide. She had no idea. That piece of equipment went to the top of the first page. Because if you aren't close enough, you aren't going to know. And your people aren't going to tell you. They aren't even going to tell you they're getting zapped on a daily basis.
Oh, that is such an incredible point, and it's a little alarming actually, because I think you're right, and I think leaders really forget that people stop telling them things, that they get so padded, people are not telling them things. And so sometimes when you're willing to go into the details, not in a way that's controlling everything, but in a way to understand everything, unless you're willing to do that, you have completely lost visibility and understanding of your business.
I agree. You've got to be in the mix. Where my workshop series works the best is when the president is part of the workshops. When they are participants, we make significant changes because the roadblocks aren't the front line. I can get them to change all day long. That's easy. To
Wow.
get them to adopt and embrace change, the front line managers, all day long, never had any problems doing it. The senior
Really?
leaders, they are the challenge. They
Oh
are
my gosh.
far. Yeah, they think it's their people. It's not. It's them. And when they are in the workshops, we get the changes implemented. When they aren't in the workshops, then there's additional levels of roadblocks to get
Wow.
through. We get there eventually most of the time, but it's a lot harder when, just like you said, if you aren't going to be there with your frontline managers, your frontline people, you're missing out on a whole lot of what is going on with your business.
Well, and I think what we notice with we too, I mean, this is rampant. A lot of it, I think, is in Kevin Wild. I always refer back to this study. Is he says that, as we rise in our careers, we're less coachable, and that is something I'm always trying to be conscious of, because that is a proven study. And I think unless we're very aware as leaders and we're catching ourselves, because we're all susceptible, we're just human beings. Like, there's no perfect leader, right? We're all just doing the best we can. But unless we're conscious about it, it's very easy to get in that trap of, this is what I hear all the time. Oh, I've already learned that. That's for my people. Oh, really? Right. So that willingness, and the ability to evolve and change, like, we talk about the summit, and it's shocking to me that there's certain leaders that will come and show up and be there and be engaged and be willing. Like, we were just prior, we were talking about Dave Doherty, and he's sitting there through the entire summit, learning, growing, developing, participating. Other CEOs that are there from other organizations represent a few. Massive amount of industry leaders that they just don't feel that they should be sitting there, that they should be developing in that way. And that's a little scary to me.
It is. And Dave stood out to me too at your conference. That when you talk about someone who is a great leader, and I've had just the limited exposure of hearing him speak and then part of the men's day with him when I led a group there. And what I saw was someone, like you said, he's there every step of the way. And he's something that most leaders aren't. He's willing to be vulnerable. He's willing to, his people will share things with him and talk to him and tell him things that they disagree with about what he's doing. And he's absorbing it. There's no defensiveness. And something that hit me recently, Jackie, with someone I was coaching, was when it comes to ego, which becomes so critical, that I think ego, this is at least my thought. I'm curious what your thoughts are, as I've been playing with this one. That ego can serve you lower in your career. That ego that I'm good enough, I deserve to move up. That ego, if you're feeling blocked, can help you move up. But once you get to a more senior level, I think ego can be your enemy, and the vulnerability becomes much more of a strength than ego does. And curious what your thoughts are, because when I see Dave, I see someone who, at least to me, in limited exposure, is pretty egoless. At least certainly what I saw. And is willing to be vulnerable. And to me, those are qualities of a great leader.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's ego is a very powerful thing, and I agree, and it's men and women. So this is not just men, women. I've seen the
Yeah.
biggest egos practically in some women, right? And I think it's just all of us have to keep ourselves in check, because this is just part of human nature. But I think with Dave, he's willing. He's willing to listen. There's a willingness, and there's a curiosity and a desire to always improve things. I don't know that. I think the posture is what we all have to get in check. Like, what are we trying to accomplish and why? Are we a leader who wants to serve the people and the organization and make it better? Are we really using that role to serve ourselves? That's a major differentiator, I think. And when you can see it, no matter what somebody says, no matter what councils they're on or whatever they're trying to do, leaders who are serving themselves it's so obvious, right? It's so obvious to the people around them. They get stuck with these leaders, right? And they just have to deal with that. And then there's other leaders who are not like that. And I feel like through these podcasts, the great thing that could happen is for people to just do some of the basics and say, what kind of leader am I? And what kind of leader do I want to be? And where do I recognize my faults? Because we all have to do that regularly, and it's painful. But unless you can do that, I just don't think we're going to move forward with how leadership looks for us, in this world.
I agree, Jackie. And the most common thing I hear from my workshop participants, because exactly what you said, the senior leaders will send their people to the workshops and then they won't participate.
Yeah.
And the most common thing I hear from the participants is, my boss needs to be here, because they are lacking as leaders. They think they got it down. They think, I know how to do this. It's just my people who need to be trained. And it's really them. And because of that, they
Mhm.
get stuck. I had one company
Yeah.
I worked with, they had these corporate initiatives that they wanted to do. And the leaders who were not in the workshops were leading these initiatives and they weren't getting done. And finally, my contact came to me and he said, can we use your workshop to get these initiatives done because we aren't able to accomplish them? And we did them. We got them done in the workshops because now we're doing it bottom up. And those leaders, because they thought they had it down, were trying to shove these changes down people's throats. And of course, just met resistance and nothing got done. So I think your point is so well taken that I think the minute you think I don't need to continue developing myself, to
Yeah.
continue looking at myself, to get feedback on how I'm doing, is the minute we really stagnate. And stagnating in this type of environment where things are changing so quickly, not a good thing.
Yes. And, before I go on to my next question to conclude this, really, we notice this. We have front row seat to this with we, because the type of development we do is not necessarily by level, it's not by seniority, although we do get a lot of executive people in our member base. It's more emotional intelligence, and it's more evolving as a leader, and those kinds of development opportunities have to be regular. It's not like a one and done. Oh, I went to the We Summit, so now I'm good for a year. It's I went to the summit and now I'm going to continue and expand on that, right? So these are the conversations. We also see when I'll give again DigiKey as an example. Linda Johnson, she's our We champion. She's on our council. She works with Dave Doherty. She is a leader that has brought this initiative to DigiKey with the blessing of Dave, right? But she's at our events. She's there participating, and you would not believe what a big turnout they get, because I think it's motivating for their team. I think it's bonding when you develop and have breakthroughs together. There could be nothing more bonding and more advantageous for the culture. And so we see it. We see when leaders actually go and be a part of the team instead of just trying to direct the team. You could see how the culture really takes off.
I agree. It makes total sense, Jackie. And when you get your people offsite at a conference like yours, it gives them a chance to think, to be strategic, to move away from the day to day that you get so caught up in that you don't get to grow, develop, strategize. And that time away at being at conferences like yours, I think is so critical for organizations.
Well, appreciate you being there. And I wanted to ask you, so as we're moving into the future, we were just kind of commenting a little while ago, I'm about to start doing my planning for 2026, and we're laughing because, you used to do these 5-year plans, 3-year plans, 1-year plan. And that is just kind of comical to even think about, right? So how have you seen, you've been a part of organizations, you've started your own. How is it that you've seen companies change in the last, say, 10 years? And then what are we looking at? How is this going to evolve as we look at the next 3 years, 5 years?
I'll be curious to get your industry perspective on this one, Jackie. For me, when I'm looking back, the biggest change in the last 10 years to me was COVID and
Okay.
remote work. That leaders who had a control all of a sudden were needing to lose control because their people were not there. And you look at what happened. And if we had that foresight, we'd have all invested in Zoom, because
So true.
companies that just Zoom meeting their people to death. And I mean that seriously. I had a neighbor. He went to work for Zoom. He became a millionaire overnight with his stock option. Zoom did so
Wow.
well.
Wow.
And people wanted to control their people's times. Well, if I know you're in a meeting, you're working. If I don't, I have no idea what you're doing. And eventually that started to ease up. And people had to learn how to lead differently and allow their people to be more driven by results, as opposed to last person in the parking lot and how many hours are you working versus what are you getting done? Are you delivering the results that we're expecting from you, and letting people do it in their own way? So I think that was the biggest one going backwards. And going forward, I think this is going to be a big challenge, our AI and robotics, and what are going to be the impacts? What are the jobs of the future? What are the jobs that are going
Mhm.
away? Where do we need people trained? And for an old guy like me, how do we keep some of the good things that we had, like actually having conversations with people? That
Yeah.
so often now, the companies we work with, they don't even have a customer service phone number. You can't talk to a person. And even the online chats aren't a person. You realize, well, that's a bot. I'm talking to a bot. How do I actually get to connect with a person? And I think losing that connectivity isn't a good thing. I think somehow we've got to be able to blend those two together. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this and what you see for your industry as well.
I think that the beauty about, let's just, we're trying to serve this technology ecosystem. So not just the supply chain, but our related end user markets. But if I look at the supply chain together, just in that perspective, it's such a relationship driven industry. And it really warms my heart when I go to different events and things, and people are so close. But I see what you're saying in the sense of, in this industry and in the industry I grew up in the electronic components, it's really a vast industry, but a small town feel. And how do you capture that and keep that? Like you're saying, I think as business leaders, somebody said something. I was moderating a panel recently, and I really love this. They said it's just as much of a requirement for leaders to make their AI plan of where they're utilizing their people instead of getting rid of them. So as you're saying, we all want to cut costs. We're all going to utilize AI, but it doesn't mean that AI needs to replace people, but it's up to the leaders to make that plan. And when we're trying to get people on board with different improvements, in their mind, they're thinking, oh, great, this is going to replace me. But if there's that plan, if there's the communication and they can see there's somewhere else for them, right, that they would evolve to, and it's better for them and the company, these issues can all be worked out, and then you still keep the human component involved. That's my wish, and that's what I hope will happen. I don't know. What do you think about that, Michael?
Jackie, I think it's so spot on that I shared this both in my keynote for you as well as your
Mm.
master class. That to me, cost savings, and it showed up in that Deloitte study that I presented, that the way to save money is not by cutting heads, it's by keeping your good people. That the cost of turnover is the most expensive expense you have in your company, and you've got to be able to keep your good people. And this comes back to creating a culture of innovation, that if now you're getting your entire company involved in saying, listen, we need to be an AI leader and we need to do this together. We need to design what our company is going to look like. We need to design what those jobs are going to be. We need to get you prepared and trained for what those jobs are going to be. And you're going to be the ones guiding and driving those initiatives. If it's happening top down in an ivory tower, you're going to have panic. And people are going to be resistant to leading that because they think that,
Yeah.
just like you said, they're going to be replaced. But if now they're in front of it, they're the one driving the innovations, they're the ones putting the plans together to implement AI and create the new jobs and the training necessary for their good people so they stay, then you're going to have an innovative company that embraces AI as opposed to pushing against it.
I love that. And like you were saying before, invite all departments and all levels to participate in these conversations, because some of the most entry level people will come with the best solutions. And I was going to say too, because I was thinking about this the other day. I think because we have, and by the way, I think, I'm probably going to be working for as long as I can, right? But I think that there's a lot of leaders that have stayed a lot longer than what we're used to in the workplace. And I think part of what has happened with that is we're not bringing in enough of the young and the fresh perspectives and really pulling people in. Whereas we're thinking we know so much because we've been around so long. But I feel like that's part of the solution. Maybe AI can be that, um, just the way and the avenue for people to start connecting with their organizations, forming councils, allowing various departments, various roles, and really listening to people's solutions.
I agree. And that's where having multi-generational teams is so important to blend the skills of all. Uh, yeah, when it comes to technology, what's my solution? I'm hiring young people because they tell me what to do. I don't understand it at the level they do. So I think you're spot on. You want to
Mm,
get a lot of younger perspectives in, get your frontline perspectives in, because even if you're really innovative, have brilliant ideas. Jackie, I saw it was my father's company. I worked there. I was like 12 or 13. I'd work there in the summer and I'd be soldering in the back. And his company was very innovative. He is on the patent for hotel key cards. And that
mm,
technology was being used back in the 70s for his business. Well, in the back, I knew what was really going on, and he didn't because he never came to the back. And I knew his business was going down. I could see what was happening, and I could see that as a 12-year-old because I could see the backroom perspective. And all he
mm.
saw was the front office perspective and his innovation, and his business did go down. That if you aren't paying attention to your whole team, the front line, getting their ideas and their inputs, you're putting your business at risk.
Wow. That's a really good message right there. And really, okay, so we have just a couple things before we wrap up. These interviews go by so fast, and I could sit here and talk to you all day long. Okay, so we mentioned a couple things. What are their blind spots? If we're a leader listening to this conversation, what are some of the generic blind spots that you see as people are rising up in their careers?
I think it goes back to something we touched on, Jackie, that they think they're already fully developed and
Okay.
that they need to continue going through training, that they need to learn and develop with their people, that they need to spend time with their front line. But the minute you think you've got it down, that to me is that to me is when you're in trouble. Plus the blind
Mm,
spot being that if you're leading top down and you think you've got the pulse of your organization, you don't. That if you aren't creating a culture of innovation, and you're willing to relinquish control, let your people lead and drive that innovation, that is going to be a critical blind spot for you, and it's going to put you behind others, especially like you said, it's 5-day plans, not 5-year plans, and you better have your entire
yeah.
team leading and driving that innovation, having them all on board with it if you're going to not have a blind spot and be able to help your company achieve all it can and help your people achieve all they can.
Mm. Oh, I really like that. Okay, so and to conclude, so we're talking about leadership, and a big part for me and just my passion for doing these podcasts, talking to leaders. It's always such a pleasure to have that opportunity. It's that human part of leadership and really understanding what drives leaders to do what they're doing. So my question to you would be, as a human being, aside from being a leader in this world, what are those things about what you do that bring you the most joy? And what are some of the things that literally could make you cry in your spirit?
I think the joy piece, Jackie, more for me is, and it's why I still am doing what I'm doing. It's when I'm conducting workshops and there's always heartwarming moments because
Mm,
people get to do what they had never been able to do before and make a difference. One line that stood out to me was with one organization, uh, they they are a food manufacturer. Roughly 1/3 of their people could not speak English, so their initiative was to build a school on their site to teach people English because those who couldn't speak English were limited. They couldn't advance in their careers. They couldn't even read their job descriptions. But to help them advance, they built this school. And the person leading this initiative said, "We are so honored to do this. This is the legacy we get to leave behind for this company." And it's those heartwarming moments like that bring me the greatest joy. And maybe this is an ego piece for me is on the keynotes. I love it when I get the feedback back. I love it when people say this meant something to them. They share how it impacted them. And I love the notes that I get back after the keynotes. And if I had to look back, I've been lucky, not a lot of pain, not a lot of maybe some business decisions I would have done differently. But if I had
mm,
to go look back 30 plus years ago to my corporate career, I joked in your masterclass, you don't want me teaching a workshop on political savvy. I wish I had a little more political savvy back then to maybe navigate some things a little differently. And it's probably why I have not been in the corporate world personally working there for over 30 years and been doing my own thing.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So since you brought that up, I'm going to ask you one more question, because part of us doing these podcasts too is to talk about the things that people are not talking about. And you just brought up something that I think is very critical. And you brought up politics. You know, there's corporate politics, but we also have our global geopolitical issues going on, right? And so I feel like as a leader, like maybe it's just the time frame I grew up in, but it didn't ever seem like you can compartmentalize very easily, and you didn't really, most people didn't bring politics into like their communities, their business, their family dinner, whatever it was. It just seemed a lot more moderate for some reason. Maybe it was just where I happened to grow up, I don't know. But now it just seems like things are so polarized in our politics, especially here in the US, that there's one extreme or the other, like it or not, wherever people fall. And as a leader, I think it poses another challenge, right? So, how do you honor all of your people, their beliefs and where they are, right? Even though these could be so far apart and could be causing serious tensions, right? So I think this is kind of a new leadership challenge. And what would you say to leaders as we're in the environment we're in? How do they help validate concerns or deep pains for their people, yet keep everyone together? How do you navigate this type of climate?
I think for me, Jackie, it's making sure that our community overrides everything. That
Mhm.
back in Pepsi days, we had so many three-letter acronyms. We had a three-letter acronym dictionary. We really did. When we launched our automotive business, it was my boss, me. He was the VP in Northern California, and I was one of his regional managers. And we had one acronym, which was PFE, Politically Free Environment. And we wanted politics out. And I think the minute you bring it in, you can't help but divide your community. And if you want to succeed, then you must keep your community together. One of the things I saw the best with one organization I worked with, they had 80 different cultures, and to blend the cultures and make sure it stayed as a sense of community, as they said, English is the language of our company, and we want everyone speaking that here because we want the cultures to be integrated. We don't want them segregating, but we also want to honor the cultures. So what they did was, when they would have recognition lunches and things like that, they'd ask the people to bring dishes from their culture, to celebrate their culture, to share with others and help them learn about the other cultures. And they were so proud to bring those lunches. Great financially for the company too. They didn't have to buy the lunches. People loved doing it, and they loved to share. So I saw, I worked with them for a lot of years. I saw a real blending of cultures and community. And I think that's it for leaders, is make sure you're focusing on your entire community and keep politics out. I don't think it can serve you in any way.
That's a really good message. I think leaders, it's a real requirement to see beyond yourself and serve your entire community, right? And the emotional intelligence part of it is, maybe some people are right about some things that you don't agree with, right? And then you just have to have that love and the respect and the honor for everyone involved, and keeping them engaged and just feeling a part of something. So with that, I don't know if you have any other tidbits to say, but I also wanted to thank you very much for being at our summit. It was a pleasure having you. And to conclude, the final thing I'll ask you is, we added a men's day this year at our summit. And again, we talk about innovation, changing things, whatever. It's been a process. We have a platform where we have women together, then we have men and women, and then we have just men. And so what do you think from your first time experiencing this as a leader, and some constructive criticism for us too, and feedback of what you would see as, and I haven't asked you this prior. So what is it you see that was good, and what is it that we could do different as we move forward?
Jackie, I spoke at a number of women's conferences, and you're the first one to have men there. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I thought the structure was really well done, that you give the women their time. You have the time to come together. And then you have the time for the men separately for three different types of conversations. And I think I may have shared with you once within all this that to me, if someone is impacted by a change or involved, they should have a voice. And
Mhm.
for women's careers to be supported in electronics, to have the chance to grow, if you're strictly talking with other women, you're going to be limiting yourself. So you need to get the men involved and be able to have very candid, honest conversations. And I thought you did a great job of facilitating that. I thought you had a lot of great topics because along with the talks, I got to be there for a lot of it too on the men's day and a good part of
Mhm.
the joint day. Getting to see what I did, I thought it was really well done, and it's risky. It's part of the innovation piece. You could have gotten a lot of pushback about bringing the guys in, and I
Mhm.
don't know if you did or not. I'm guessing there probably was some about doing that, and
Yes.
it's you've got to be willing to take those risks. And certainly from everything I saw, from the feedback I got, it was a hit. I thought it was a very well run and very well organized conference. I think you've got a great team. All the people that I met who supported me, helped me, all did a great job. You've clearly built a great team. They clearly have a lot of fondness for you as well.
Thank you for saying that. We do have an amazing team. Shout out to the team for all the hard work and our speakers. So to conclude, thank you for being there. All the speakers that were there, they put their heart and soul right into it. So many of those amazing speakers. So anyone listening, you can join us at our next summit. Go to weunited.tech and you will be able to find us there and in our next summit. And also with Michael Levin, if you want to catch him, michaeljlevin.com. That's coming across the screen right now. Go find him there. I'm sure he would love to come to your organization and support you as well. So with that, Michael, I hope you have a fabulous holiday, and it was very nice to see you.
Thank you, Jackie. You as well.